Hi everybody. Happy Halloween. My name is Charlene Margot and I'm co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture. With me today is co-founder Bev Hartman. Hi Bev. And our keynote presenter, Dr. Eran Magen. This is a parent forum, actually number 43 in our series that started about 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And today's topic is a popular one, helping your child build good habits. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. Please join me, everybody, in a warm virtual welcome for our friend, Dr. Eran Magen. Hi, take it away, Eran.
All right, thank you, our friend Charlene and our friend Bevan, all the new friends. I just want to reiterate what Charlene said before. This part when I'm talking is getting recorded, but only my box is getting recorded, not yours. So you can do whatever you'd like to shock us all. We will see it, but it will not be recorded. And if you don't have your video on and you would like to, that would be lovely because it's nice to see just roughly how many of the people that are here like falling asleep or like riveted and super interested, so I know whether to go slower or faster. It's a smaller group today, which is actually very nice because then we get into deeper discussions. Recently, we've had like very large groups, so this is a refreshing change for me at least. Let me share my screen. Here we are. So today's topic, how to build good habits. And I want to start off as usual just by saying, good job. Being a parent can be tricky sometimes. Don't don't let yourself get too bogged down in all the things that are going wrong and all the challenges and all the things that other kids seem to be doing better than your kid with respect to, where they wipe their nose or how quickly or cleanly they eat. Parenting is tough. Parenting requires so many resources, and the fact that you're just making time to sit here today and think about this, just to spend time thinking about this, means you're doing a good job. And hopefully this will give you some more tools to do an even better job. But we are a judgment-free zone. I think you are great parents already. Today is about habits. Habits are really important. Habits are automatic behaviors that we perform without having to think about it, without having to like consider whether or not we want to do them and go through a whole deliberation process. We just do them, right? Most of us wake up and soon after waking up, brush our teeth in the morning. We don't have that discussion with ourselves every day. With our kids, we might, right? At some ages, at some point, have that discussion every day. But once it's incorporated as a habit, it's automatic and easy. And the more we do it, the more likely we are to continue doing it. So they're super powerful. Uh, and they can be used for good or for evil, right? We might have habits that we're not fans of that make us do things that we wish we didn't. And we might have habits that are really helpful for us and that we really like the things that they get us doing. And so the more we can intentionally design habits that are helping us in life, the better. And likewise for our kids, the more we can help them design habits that are helpful for them in their lives or helpful for us in our lives without hurting them, the better. And so this is why I think it's worth spending, a half hour of our lives thinking about habits. I'll start with the very bottom line for those of you who are already feeling exhausted, thinking about departing ahead at night. So if you'll give me your total attention for the next 30 seconds or so, this is the takeaway. When you're building a new habit, the most important, and the habit can be a complex series of steps. You do this thing first, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next, and we want you to do all of this every day at 5 p.m. The very first step is the most important step, right? Just to be able to start to do the start of A out of this chain of A, B, C, D, E things we want to do, to be able to do A every day at 5 p.m. consistently, that's by far and away the most important part of establishing a new habit. Once you have anything that is happening regularly, you can then start extending and improving and building. But the toughest part is getting that first step to happen regularly. In this case, take a walk on the beach, every day at 5 p.m. Or if you want your kid to clear the dishes from the table, just to take anything to the kitchen after the meal. If you want to do homework, just to go to the room every day at the particular hour or after a particular event. The first step is the most important. Once that happens, you can build on it easily. This also means that that's the only thing we require at the beginning and for a long time, just that step one in the habit, rather than focusing on immediately doing the whole thing perfectly every time. So that's the very bottom line, and I'll go into a bit more detail. When we build a habit, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by where we're trying to get, right? If we want to exercise more, if we want to eat better, if we want to be more social or less social, if we want to clean more regularly, if we want to clean less, if we want to go to bed at a better hour, whatever it is, thinking about the full program can be overwhelming, right? I'm going to exercise 4 times a week for an hour and 15 minutes, and immediately I don't want to think about it anymore, right? And like I was saying before, step one, learning to just starting to exercise and then adding more to it is so important. And we want to do the additions, the additional steps, for example, for exercising or cleaning the room or whatever it is. We want the increments to be manageable, like the rungs of a ladder, right? When we climb a ladder, they're not set 10 feet apart. They're set, what is it, foot apart, maybe? So that it's very easy to climb. Improving in a habit should feel very easy. Again, let's get more concrete in a minute, but I think the last thing I want to say in the abstract is that when you're trying to get your kid to acquire a new habit, nothing is more important than being aligned with your kid about the importance of acquiring this habit, right? You don't want to be forcing your child to do this every single time, because then as soon as you're not there, your child will not want to do it. So you have to have alignment between you and your child about doing the thing that you're asking. And there has to be alignment, including in your child's mind, about how is this thing serving some important goal that you have or that your child have. But it has to make sense to your kid. You need buy-in from your kid when you're starting a new habit, a whole new habit. So here's the quick and tragic story of how to fail at building a new habit. New habits will not stick. New habits like, take the dog on a walk when you come back from school, or clear your dishes from the table, or do homework after dinner, or whatever it is, they're not going to stick if the change is abrupt, if doing the thing is frustrating, if it's unpleasant to do it, and if it doesn't feel relevant to anything that's important to me, your child, temporarily. They will stick if you do exactly the opposite. If you introduce the changes slowly, if I feel successful when I'm doing them, if it's fun to do, that's ideal, or at the very least, if it's not unpleasant to do, and if it's clearly relevant, in my mind, it's connected to something important. So let's break these down. How do we do each of these things? In terms of relevance, this is what I was mentioning before about how important it is that we are aligned with our child, and that the plan is aligned with something your kid cares about. So it starts with a conversation. This can be done at any age, 2 and up, whatever is the habit that you want your child to acquire. We're going to be cutting our fingernails. Cutting fingernails is a big deal, right? When they're little, they don't want parts of their body cut off, understandably. It's scary. And so it could be this, or it could be spending time working on the college applications on the other end, right? But whatever it is, talking with your kid and saying, you have this goal, is this correct? You want this thing to happen? You want to get into this college, is this right? Or you want to get into band, or you want to not have to clean our dog's mess when he goes on the carpet, or you want to not scratch yourself or scratch mommy accidentally, right? You start with aligning on the goal, and then ideally arrive at an agreement regarding how this new habit will help your kid achieve this goal in very concrete steps. And if you cannot get this alignment, you need to stop and really rethink this, because your alternative is either to force your kid to do it, which is potentially disastrous, right? Because then again, when you're not there, like, they'll build resistance, and as soon as you're not there, they'll kind of rebound in the other direction, not do it. Or you could just tell your kid, just do it for me, please, which is fair, but you can only do it so many times before you kind of run out of relational coin, right? So ideally, you get this alignment. You agree that there's an important goal, and then you agree on how this particular behavior is going to help reach that goal. ideally, taking that first step in the habit is somehow pleasurable, right? So remember that the focus is on the first step of the habit. If we want our kid um, doing homework every day, let's say what we agreed on is that it's a good idea to, after coming back home from school, have a 30-minute break and hang out. And then after 30 minutes pass, let's say 2:30 p.m. or 3 p.m., they go to the room and start doing homework, right? The part where they disengage from whatever they're doing and going to the room is the hardest part by far, right? And so how do we make that more pleasant? How do we reward this? Think about, when people come to a realization that they're alcoholics and they go to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And they start, the goal is to stop drinking, but one of the ways that it's done is they're reinforced, they're rewarded with coins, tokens, sobriety tokens, right? For staying sober for so many days or weeks. We get the first one after the first day, and then after a week, and then a month, and then 3 months, right? You reward a lot at the beginning. The start is the hardest. A lot of people say, I want to reward only when it's done. After you did your homework for a month in a row and got an A on the test, then you'll get a big reward. That's great, but it's too far to motivate for most people, let alone kids who live even more in the present than we do. Right? So you want to motivate, you want the reward to be very close. They just need to move a little bit toward it. So starting by going to the room. In this particular case, if the agreement is at 2:30, go to the room to start doing homework, it may be that the first step is actually setting an alarm for 2:30 or disengaging from whatever they're doing, just getting up, putting aside the thing that they're doing. But find out what is the first step that requires effort and then figure out a way to reward it. Pretty hard. So if you're there and you're noticing it, which is ideally what happens at the beginning anyway, at the very least, you want to praise this a lot. Good job, right? Great work going to get started with homework. You took the fork to the kitchen. Amazing. I really appreciate it, right? But just to be seen and to make sure that you are at the very least verbally rewarding explicitly, immediately, the first step of building the habit. We want our kid to feel successful when they're doing the thing, right? Whatever it is. If they're not feeling successful, they're not going to want to continue. I mean, every kid has a different motivational sweet spot. Some kids are better with frustration and some aren't. Some want to feel challenged and some don't. But you know your kid and what works for your kid. And so you want to find that spot of challenge that they like, but not go beyond it. You don't want them feeling consistently failing at this because then that builds resistance. Why would we want to do something we're not good at? Right? So if you want your kid to learn to kick a ball, or if you want your learn to read in Arabic, or if you want your kid to learn to play the flute, or if you want your kid to learn to wash the dishes, whatever it is, it needs to be pleasant, ideally, but they need to feel successful. If they're washing dishes and every time you go like, I missed a thing, I missed a thing, I missed a thing, they're going to stop. They're not going to want to do it tomorrow, right? But if they give you the dish and it's filthy, but they just like scrub the sponge on it and then rinsed it a little bit, and you go, great job, and you put it aside in the pile of things you're going to wash again, right? But you have them feel successful. You don't have to say, this is perfectly clean, amazing, but you can say, this is great, I'm glad you're washing it. Good job, dismissed. I just wanted you to wash one plate today. Well done, right? And you want them building the habit of coming to the sink after dinner, if that was the goal, or whatever it is, right? But they have to feel successful right away. Ideally, this is something that comes up in that discussion from the relevance piece, right? If they say, oh, I really want to get into band, and you say, well, you're probably going to need to practice reading the score, right? To be able to sight read if you want to do this. How much do you think you can practice every day? And they're like, I don't know, practicing is really boring. And you're like, okay, what can you stand given that you have this goal? And they go, I don't know, I guess you could do 5 minutes every day. And you're like, how about two? And then watch their eyes light up, right? The goal is for it to be so easy that there's no question in their mind that they can do it. That's where it starts, right? And then when they realize 2 minutes is actually really easy, maybe you make it 2.5. And related to this is the idea of the ladder, right? Ladders are built the way they're built for a very good reason, right? If you're trying to climb 20 feet into the air, it's unlikely that the first rung of the ladder will be 10 foot into the air. And that's like most of us don't need like enormous running jumps to get to the ladder and start climbing, right? The first rung is very low to the ground. We just step on it and we're right there. And then the next rung, same thing, short distance and we climb, right? And for some reason, a lot of people, myself included, intuitively, especially when I get excited, like we want to have either ourselves or other people do these enormous jumps in performance, the equivalent of setting rungs 10 feet apart, like, a giant jump, try to catch. And if you did catch, another giant jump and try to catch. Not realistic. People are not going to put in that kind of effort. But if it's really easy and if the view is pleasant and if people are cheering us on, we're going to climb all the way up to 30 feet, no problem. If the rungs are spaced 1 foot apart from each other. Same deal, right? Practice for 2 minutes a day. If that's what you agreed on, great. It keeps going. Your child's enjoying succeeding and like goes for 2.5 minutes and you go, stop, stop. It's been 2.5 minutes. You have to stop. Your child wants to keep going, fine. But if your child finds it easy and you slowly increase it by 30 seconds at a time, right? And then by the end of 2 weeks, you're suddenly practicing 5 minutes a day or 7 minutes a day or whatever it is. Slow and steady is enormously important in building habits. We don't want to burn out on this new habit. Oh, this is what I was saying before. Okay, so that's what I was talking about now. I'm not going to belabor the point, but small increments. All right, when you are establishing a new habit, any kind of habit, again, walking the dog, clearing the dishes, washing the dishes, doing homework, practicing music, learning to do handstands, walking away when feeling upset and realizing I'm about to start shouting, like all the things, everything is a habit. Everything can be a habit. The order of events, the things that we're trying to do in this order are: one, we want the first step of that habit to happen consistently. Like I was saying before, right? It's 3 p.m., boing, we get up, we go to the homework desk. Dinner is over, we grab the plate. Uh, Came back from school, I put down the backpack, I grab the dog leash. Whatever is the thing, we want to make sure that we consistently take the first step at the right time. Whatever the trigger is for the behavior, right? Maybe it's time-based, like 3 p.m., or maybe it's event-based, like you came home or you woke up or whatever it is, right? But we want to consistently take that first step. That's by far and away the most important thing, because everything after that can be improved. But if we don't take the first step, there's nothing. We're anchored in sand. The next thing we want to focus on is the quality of the performance. So if your kid is practicing sight reading or playing the clarinet for 2 minutes a day, and your kid is consistently starting the practice at the appointed time, it's much more important that those 2 minutes be high quality practice than that you get 20 minutes of low quality practice, right? 2 minutes of high quality practice a day will get you very far in almost everything, right? So when they're playing, and reduce distractions, praise and compliment and reward if needed, however you're motivating them, or remind them of the plan that they have and how this will be good for the plan. But be explicit. You can even say, look, you just need to do this for 2 minutes, but do an excellent job during those 2 minutes, right? You want to get those 2 minutes to look the same way you want all of the rest of it to look. So if they're washing dishes and they learn how to wash dishes well at this point, you want them for 2 minutes or for one plate or whatever is the goal here to do it well. So you build up to them being able to do it very well, even for a tiny amount. Once they can do it very well, you start increasing the quantity of the time or the plates or the whatever to the extent that they can sustain that excellent level of performance. Right? So that's the order of events. Consistently do step one at the appointed time, do a very good job of step one, and then add step two, step three, step four, and so on, only after the last step is done really well. General tips for establishing good habits. One is that very first conversation that you're having with your kid about building the habit. Listen, I'd like you to help out more with taking out the dog because I realized that it's only been me. And when we got the dog, you promised that you would help. And because I'm taking the dog for a walk, then either I cut the walk short and that's not fair for the dog, or I have less time to do my own things, including helping you with your stuff. So I would love for you to pitch in. How do you feel about this? Listen, you said you really wanted to get into the varsity team at volleyball, and you said that you feel like not all your skills are right up there. So how do you feel about just spending more time practicing on it? Whatever it is. That conversation, there are better times and worse times to have that conversation, right? So have it at a better time. Think like this is a very important conversation. So think about when you want to have it and prepare for it a little bit. So probably you want to do it when everybody's more or less well rested, everybody's more or less in a good mood, nobody's fighting with anybody else, right? There's time and bandwidth to talk about it. It's a very important conversation. Just spend a minute thinking about when you want to have it. And like I mentioned before, just make sure that you're aligned on the goal, the why for this habit. And the goal may be something your kid really wants, or it may be something you really want, and that's fair too, right? You need some help. Fair enough, right? But just be explicit and clear and make sure that you're both aligned on the reason to do this thing. And then pick a very specific trigger for step one. So I gave a lot of examples as I talked, so I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on this, but the trigger is basically about a specific time, like on the clock, or arriving at a particular place, or an event. The event can be internal or external, but the more concrete it is, the easier. So an internal event might be when I realize that I'm uh, getting very anxious. That's kind of a hard one, right, to recognize in real time. But it may be if somebody's shouting at me, that's easier to recognize. Or it may be if I'm feeling sleepy or if I'm yawning or whatever it is. Or it may be an external event, right? Some person came in, the dog has been barking for 30 minutes, whatever it is. But pick a trigger, pick a clear trigger that then starts the behavior. And then choose goals and goals that you can control. People often are tempted to pick kind of outcome goals, right? Getting an A on the test, uh, I don't know, running at a certain speed, getting into, passing auditions, whatever it is. These are very hard to control. What we can control is the amount of practice that we put in. So something like the amount of time that we spend practicing, the number of times that we do the thing. These are things we can control. And we may find out that we chose a time that's not sufficient, right? Maybe we practice for 10 minutes a day and still we can't run as fast as we would like the marathon, right? Maybe we need to practice more. But the goals, the immediate thing that we're tracking is the inputs, practice that we're putting into it. And ideally track the behavior in some really um, visible way. Create accountability, right? And this is not just for your kid to report back to you if the thing happened or not, but it's also because we like, as people, we tend to like momentum. We don't want to break a winning streak. Duolingo built their whole business model around it, right? Like nobody wants to break the streak. And so if you have a chart, if you're with a kid who's at the right age for the gold stickers, and you have a calendar and they get a gold sticker every time they walk the dog and they see the last 12 days they did it, they'll probably want to do it on the 13th. Troubleshooting for building new habits. Sometimes they will have taken the dog out for 12 days, but then they forgot or resisted or objected taking it out on the 13th day. And the question is, what do we do then, right? They didn't walk the dog, they didn't wash the dishes, they did snap at their little brother, they didn't practice well or didn't practice at all on their clarinet, whatever it is. The main thing is to essentially ignore the failure and continue steady on. So you're not going to go, you don't want your kid to walk the dog twice the following day or wash dishes for double the time or practice clarinet for double the time or whatever it is, or do twice the exercise, right? If you forgot to do your 10 sit-ups, you don't want to do 20 sit-ups the following day. And just get back on track. Just do the thing that you agreed to do on that day. Possibly consider doing a little bit less, especially if you see that for a couple of times in a row, your kid missed the thing that you agreed would happen and that your kid actually agreed to do. Because if it seemed like you're all agreeing and then your kid didn't do it, there's some difficulty there, some friction, that maybe your kid's aware of but didn't want to tell you, or maybe you're both aware of and you kind of didn't want to actually take into consideration. So maybe it needs to be a smaller ask, right? Maybe instead of 2 minutes, it's 1 minute of practice. Maybe instead of uh, 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 5 dishes, it's 3 dishes, whatever it is, right? Consider decreasing the demand rather than increasing it. Because if I didn't do it yesterday, if I didn't wash my 5 dishes yesterday, I'm probably not going to feel enthusiastic about washing 10 dishes today, right? We're just increasing the resistance. And the whole goal here is to make this really easy. Maybe the rung of the ladder needs to be lower down to the ground. So if you slipped, if your kid slipped, if it didn't work, just come back to it. Don't compensate. Just come back to doing the thing. If it happened twice in a row, lower the requirement. If it happened even more, have a conversation again and just ask what's happening and how can we make this easier, or how can you, is the link still clear to your kid about why this is important and so on. And then something people ask about often, so I just wanted to put it here in advance, is about breaking bad habits. If your kid is routinely doing something that you and your kid agree is not a good idea, but it's still happening, how can you teach your kid to stop doing it? And the answer is that it's very hard to not do things in general. It's easier to learn to do things that make it not possible to do the bad thing, right? So if your kid uh, is always walking around with his finger up his nose, it's very hard to teach your kid to not have his finger in his nose all the time. It's easier to teach your kid to hold his own hands all the time, or to put his hands in his pocket all the time. I'm not saying these are all great solutions, but just kind of as a admittedly weird example, uh, it's easier to learn to do things that block the bad behavior, right? If your kid is always playing video games at 2 a.m., it's hard to not play game to learn how to not play games at 2 a.m. is sort of abstract and weird and hard. But if your kid develops the habit of going to sleep at 11 p.m., then your kid can't play games at 2 a.m., right? So look for the thing to do rather than trying to teach to not do something. It's usually not hard to find. It's very commonsensical. Okay, to summarize, new habits stick if you introduce them slowly. The first rung is pretty low to the ground, and subsequent rungs are not far from the from the previous rung. If we feel successful when we're doing it, which means we should not be doing a lot or something that's too challenging right at the beginning. We need to feel consistently successful. It needs to feel relevant. It needs to seem relevant to your child, right? It needs to feel like it connects to a goal that is important to your child, which may also be a goal that you have, but you want to be explicit about it. Because I want to help daddy, I want to help mommy with this thing. And ideally, it's pleasant. And if it's not an activity that's inherently pleasant or immediately pleasant, because at the beginning we're unskilled or not used to it or whatever, then we can make it pleasant as parents by rewarding and or praising. These are the things that are going to boost by a lot your chance of establishing a new habit successfully. You want to have a really clear trigger for when the first step of the habit happens, something super concrete, a time or a place or an event. The focus is on doing that first step consistently. And after that, that's the anchor. On that, you can hang and chain more behaviors if you need, increase the quality, increase the quantity. But that first step is the most critical thing. And you want to make it easy to track. You want to know, and you want your child to know if the thing happened and how often. And seeing a dip doesn't mean your child is doing something wrong. It means this is not designed well enough. It doesn't meet these 4 criteria, right? That's what it means if a habit is not sticking. So you need to go back to the design session, ideally with your kid, understand what happened and somehow make it either slower or easier to be successful, or realizing differently or anew that it's relevant and ideally pleasant. Okie doke. I think that's everything here. Yes. So my final slide is just a plug for other things that I'm doing. Well, I mean, it's the same things as we did here that I'm doing. So there are 2 websites that I run in 2 kind of related communities. One is parentingforhumans.com and one is divorcingdads.org. And for either of these, going there, there are materials there and some recorded workshops and resources. The one for divorcing dads specifically, as you may guess, is for divorcing dads and just giving them tools to stay in the lives of their kid, co-parent, uh, with less conflict and just be there for their kids, basically. Um, and then on either website, you can join the mailing list and the community, which will give you then notifications, blog posts coming out. There's a podcast that I do about things related to this, workshops that'll happen in the future, and then groups where parents can come together every couple of weeks and just think about their kids, not hear me talk, but to sit together and think about how things are going and just kind of strategize about ideas of things they might want to do differently.